Hello, founders. I'm here with another founder success story in conjunction with startups.com, the online on demand accelerator community. We're founders accelerating other founders. And I had the pleasure of meeting Erin Eagle, and she is the founder of A Style Set. And I've got her website up right here and pretty straightforward style guides you can get online. But there's a really unique approach that Erin took. And so I want to, bring Erin on and have this conversation. Erin, thank you so much. Welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. So what is a style set?
A Style Set is a community-driven platform for Gen Z that simplifies the shopping experience. So I provide outfit ideas, style guides, links to shop. Everything is super easy to find. So for someone who may usually spend hours looking for the perfect outfit or the perfect wardrobe for a season or an event, can just go to my Instagrams or website and find exactly what they need without taking all of the time to look for it.
Okay. What I find interesting, when we first met right away is that one, you have some pretty impressive metrics. And then two, your approach is a little different than other people who are trying to promote style and everything out there and show that are shown on screen. We can jump into that. Let's talk first about what metrics. So how many style guides have people downloaded? How many followers do you have? Stuff. Just, qualify yourself and let everybody know what you've accomplished so far.
So the women's account has about 110,000 followers, and then the men's account has about 70,000 followers, and then the TikTok also has about 20,000. So the men's account is a more recent addition that is growing super fast. I started that this past summer in July, and the women's account I started about 2 years ago. So it's been a more stable, consistent growth. And I believe, I don't know the exact number of guides I've launched. I think maybe 7 to 10. And the men's so far have been the most popular with about 25,000 downloads. And the women's probably have around 25,000 to 30,000 total downloads as well.
Okay. So you're verging on 60,000 downloads. And as far as the audience that you've got, you have basically, close to 160, 170,000 followers, but you also are an influencer yourself. So your account is in these jeans and you've got 100,000 followers. And, I was just perusing and you pretty much, put together these outfits and you're out there. So walk us through, because, I find this fascinating how typically, influencers go out there and they get into business because, I've built an audience. So what's been the influencer journey? Like, how did you get started? Did you just one day start posting? Did you think it through? Was there a strategy? And what has it been like to become an online influencer? Because you are.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It was never the plan or something that I thought through in my head. It was more just while I was in high school, wanting something creative to do other than school. And I just needed an outlet to kind of get my creativity out. And I always loved fashion. I love social media. I grew up on social media and I was always growing accounts. Like I would create just little accounts here and there. When I was obsessed with dance moms back in the day, I created an account for that. And it grew pretty big while I was in middle school. And although it's embarrassing, it showed that I knew how to grow an account just because I was so kind of immersed in that whole world. And so I just started this fashion account in these jeans, and it was simply just documenting my outfits. My mom would help me take my photos and I would just post them, and my friends would look through them for inspiration. And it was simply just for my friends to find because they were always asking where I was getting my outfits. So it was just a way for them to get some inspiration and get some ideas for their own style. So I kept going with it. I didn't grow much of a following throughout high school. And then in college, I just kept going. And I started working with photographers at school, and I just kept going. It was nothing. It wasn't a career. It was just simply posting my outfits. And then COVID hit and internships got canceled. I was looking for internships kind of within the digital media space. And I was home with nothing to do. So I, of course, started posting on TikTok, as most people did during that time. I started posting my outfits. I would wake up every morning, take my videos, edit them, and I just kept going with it. It was super fun. The account grew really fast, and people started to reach out to me for style help. And usually a lot of girls, actually some guys as well, around high school, college age, would DM me and say, I'm going back to school. I really need clothes for classes and I have no idea what to wear. So then I just started transitioning to personal styling for these people while I had nothing to do anyway. So I was kind of balancing the influencer space. It was really kind of blowing up. I was getting deals with brands and I started having more success there and never realizing I could even make money from this. And suddenly it could be a job, to also on the other side doing the personal styling, which I loved and it was super creative. And so doing both of these kind of led me to a style set, but also doing my own because it's where I started and I still love putting outfits together. And I'm so lucky that I've been able to work with so many amazing brands now, and I got to just continue it on.
Let's establish you are making money as an influencer, social media, like it actually generates revenue for you, and you got brand deals. So you also have a manager. So like it's a professional setup.
Yes.
Okay. How much, my question, how much did having an already established social media presence and being an influencer help you launch a style set and get traction for a style set?
It definitely helped immensely because not only did I understand the strategies behind growing a following and growing a community, but I also understood the content that people wanted to see because I was getting very specific feedback from people and I knew exactly what clothes people wanted. I knew exactly what people liked, didn't like. And so when I launched a style set, I knew exactly what would provide value to people. So I wasn't just posting random outfits out of the blue. I was posting very specific with like a strategy in mind. So it was never just random. And in addition to that, I also was utilizing my audience from In These Jeans to grow the following. So I would do a giveaway and I would have people follow both accounts in order to enter, or I would post stories and I would say follow a style set for more specific styling help. Or I would just guide people to a style set if they DM'd me with specific questions.
Let's pull up the principle here for other founders. Doing your social media is like one huge idea validation and customer discovery experiment, right? So you have 100,000 followers on your own personal account, and that literally is like doing customer discovery with 100,000 people ahead of time, and you get direct feedback and you can iterate. So a lot of other founders I talk to, what they do is before they'll put out any other type of marketing content, they'll say something kind of controversial or put out an idea on Twitter, and whichever gets the most responses and different things like that, and you'll get messages, then that will translate into videos, which will translate into products. And, it's kind of that iterative cycle. So you're doing the same thing. You're posting, hey, I don't know if this is going to work or not. And, I'm going to put it out there. And then you get feedback and you say, oh, this is going to inform product development. And that's how you got everything going.
Exactly. Yeah. And people also love to feel involved. And so whenever I would post polls on my stories or ask questions, people love it. They love answering. They love seeing how their answer matches up to other people's answers. And so I just continued to do these polls, and it was literally like conducting surveys in market research, but I didn't have to go through the hassle of like finding everyone to send them out to because I had my audience right there.
That's amazing. Let's let's give some advice for other founders who could be using social media to beef up their own startups. How intentional? You heard the story, you just kind of start doing it because you're passionate about it. But then how intentional should founders be? Because I find a lot of founders get caught in analysis paralysis. So they overthink, what's my content going to be? What's going to happen? What are the responses going to be? How does this actually make money? Production. And they get into this kind of perfectionist mode and they don't put stuff out. What advice would you give to founders who are thinking about entertaining this social media strategy, becoming an influencer to help their startup?
I guess I've had struggles with that too, where I would overthink, but I always find that the best way to do it is to just post as much as possible without the perfectionism in mind and see what works and what doesn't. And once you figure out what sticks, you can continue with that. But I think nowadays it's not about perfection anymore. It's not about perfect production, especially on TikTok. People like relaxed, interesting, entertaining content that isn't overproduced because people want to relate to the content in some way. So I think with a lot of companies, they can have fun with social media and they can kind of post, just try different things out and see what people respond to and try to evoke emotions with the audience and kind of see, I guess usually when you can evoke some kind of emotion or create some kind of entertaining content without overthinking it, that's when you get the most responses.
I've seen some founders tell me what they tried, and they learned this from other influencers, especially on TikTok, where it's bite sized. Like it doesn't take much to post a 15-second video or 30-second video. Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts and things like that. But when it comes to pictures, Instagram, anything, they say put out 100 piece of content over 100 days. Like just put it out every day, watch the feedback, and then see what happens. And don't stop till you hit the 100. Then you evaluate. Even Mr. Beast, he's the most subscribed to individual creator on YouTube. He says, "Don't ask me advice on how to build my channel until you do 100 videos, and every video try and improve one thing in each video," right? And so that's what I've heard. And then after 100 videos and you've tried to improve and you learn the lessons, now let's talk strategy. How much do you agree or disagree? What are your thoughts on that?
I 100% agree. And also, there's the whole algorithm behind it. So if you're posting every day consistently, you will see results. Ultimately, it might take a while and you have to kind of be patient and trust the process. But if you keep posting, the algorithm favors you. Whereas I've gone through kind of periods on my personal account where I've stopped posting for a bit when I get busy and I can't manage everything. And the algorithm brings my content back down where less people are seeing it. So if you just post for 100 days, once a day at least, I think that I think there's a good chance that you'll see results in some way, as long as, of course, the content provides value and everything.
Sure. Okay. So, personal question for you. We've talked about this before, but I think people watching this, it'll be interesting. What stops you from just being an influencer? Like you've got people with millions of followers. Clearly, you've tapped into something. You could keep going, just do brand deals. Forget about trying to build a company, a startup. Startups are hard. Like there's so much stuff. You and I, we talk, right? As your advisor, we talk about all the things that you have to do in startups. You could just kind of ride the gravy train and be a social media person. You've already got, momentum. You clearly have what it takes in terms of the overall packaging strategy, mentality. What stops you from just saying, I'm just going to be an influencer?
I guess it's hard and I do go back and forth, but I guess ultimately I don't feel like I will be fulfilled just being an influencer. I feel like there's more that I want to do, and I've always been the person to be creating businesses and just creating in general. So I feel just that there's just more that I want to do and more that I want to provide for other people than just posting my own outfits. I want to provide value for other people. I want to help other people find their style. And I don't necessarily feel that I can do that just through my own outfits. And I also don't know if it's a sustainable career. I don't know if in a few years influencing won't have the same power as it does now. I think already it's an oversaturated market. There's so many people doing the same thing. And I just feel like I want to be doing something different. I want to keep pushing for other things and just make sure that I am in a good place financially and I have different sources of income.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a moment. I explain to founders because there's a delineation between influencer and creator, right? And so an influencer makes money directly from AdSense, sponsorships, everything like that, which is the reason I'm confident I can call you an influencer because you're getting paid to post on social media. Whereas a creator, they've got another business going on and they use social media and they create content to drive to that business. So let's say you could be a photographer and you're taking a certain amount of pictures, but what you do is you put out content about your photography, or maybe you give photography tips or how to, get best family portraits so that it highlights your business and it drives eyeballs and income. You're wanting to become the second, a creator that uses your social media to build a style set, which is your startup.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then for you, this is going to be my last question about the influencer to the startup. So what is your ongoing strategy for social media to build the social media? If you had to encapsulate so other founders, when they say, I want to use social media to drive as a creator, to drive towards my startup, give us kind of like the lesson or the strategy or what you would share with other founders in, concise as possible on what they should be doing or thinking.
I guess the strategy is to have all three accounts be aligned in some way. So a a style set man are the same account, but for men and women. And then in these jeans is it's not really about me, even though it's me behind the outfits, it's more showing how to style pieces. And so it all ties back to the same theme of how to style, how to put outfits together. So because it's so aligned, I feel like I can direct people to the other two accounts because it just gives them a more in-depth version of what I'm already doing on the main account, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. The alignment is key. So, for example, let's say that you have a specific type of product. Like I know a founder who is an expert in wines and, entertainment and all that stuff. And she puts on these parties, virtual parties, and she wants to have social media, advertise those parties. So she can have that social media, but then also she could do her own account behind the scenes, her opinions, her life, as she's doing these parties, and give people a backstage pass, which gets people following her, but eventually leads to her product. That would be kind of the alignment that we're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. I think people love to see kind of a another perspective, another angle. People love to see behind the scenes. They love to see how you're doing what you're doing. How do you run the business? So I think for people with very clear and direct specific businesses, they can easily use social media to their advantage to kind of show more than what they're putting out and kind of show a face to the product, because I think people like also when there's a personal element.
I don't think I've ever asked you this question. How much schooling or how relevant has your schooling been to help you with social media, startup, becoming a founder? Like, what's your background in education? Did I lose you?
Oh, sorry, I lost you for
Okay.
a second.
Yeah.
So I studied advertising and I minored in startups and tech, basically.
Gotcha.
And so both were actually very helpful, but it was hard because I don't think that the curriculum keeps up with the fast-paced nature of social media. So even though I was learning, I was also doing it at the same time. So I could have done like learned it all on my own, but it was definitely helpful. And also my minor was extremely helpful because We learned how to write a business plan. We learned how to actually you know, go about kind of developing a startup, and we actually created them on our own. And at the time, I created this idea my senior year. So it was a little bit different at the time, but it worked out really well in the sense that I actually used that time in school to work on this idea. So I think it was helpful, but I definitely think it's hard to keep up now because everything's just moving so fast.
All right. You're doing the influencer thing. You start evaluating, go, maybe, and you're going to school and you're like, okay, I want to start a startup. So walk us through. So what were the phases or the process that you went through to decide upon what your product actually was going to be?
A lot of different phases, a lot of different testing. The account started as just the outfits on the Instagram. I didn't have a product yet. I would just post these outfits and I would link them on my website. And then I realized that there was a need for more in-depth guides on how to dress for specific seasons or niches. And so I started creating the style guides, and I guess that's considered my first product. So I created my first guide in the fall of 2021, and there was an immediate need for this guide. I only made it available if you DM'd me and followed me, and then I would give them the password to the guide. So I was trying to kind of make it an exclusive way for them to feel like they were getting access to something. And so I got a few thousand downloads on that guide, but it was really hard because I had to keep up with all of these DMs.
It's a lot of work.
And I was like, this it just isn't a sustainable way to release these guides. So I started, after the spring guide, I started putting the guides on my website. My first idea for that was to charge $10 for the style guide. I was giving it for free. Now I decided I'm going to test it out and see if people are willing to pay. I charged $10 and it did not get as many downloads as it did the first two times. And I realized that that business model probably doesn't make sense because although people do want the guide, they're not going to necessarily be willing to pay money for it.
Yeah.
Unless it was just maybe even more in depth. I wasn't sure, but it just didn't make sense to at least scale it. So now my new plan is to release the guides on my website for free, but also get brand partners and have brands pay to be featured in these style guides. And in addition to that, have a newsletter that will go out most likely weekly, or if possible, more than that. And I'll also get ad placements on there.
Great.
So the whole goal is to give as much content for free as possible and just monetize through ads and brand partners.
Yeah, the key thing is you have to understand what customers or users want and what problems they have and what they're willing to pay for. Like how big of a problem or pain point it is and are they willing to pay for it, are completely different things, right? And so what you did in pulling this lesson for other founders is actually, challenge your statement a little bit in that your first product was your social media account, right? That you set up. It was a really light MVP version as you research, but then you iterated and you kept kind of turning the puzzle piece and you learned lessons along the way. But meanwhile, you're building the asset of the audience, which is great. And then you come to this conclusion that, hey, I need to just start tweaking my business model. Welcome to startup, right? That's, the infuriating process that goes in. So I'm curious. So what's the thought process, because when I initially, we met and I knew I was going to meet you and I go, okay, all about style guides. I typically see, I think models and, I think all this stuff, but you literally take this, you cut and paste, and then you just block it. And there it is. This is like a catalog.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I remember talking to you and I was like, it's like, back in the day when I was in elementary school, you know, used to have kind of like the mannequin sticker sheet, and then you could cut out the pieces of clothes and put it on the mannequin. It's
Yeah.
literally what I started thinking of. So it's just plain, you know, black and white on the background. It's different. It's almost contrarian to what other people have, you know, out there. So how did you come to this conclusion to differentiate yourself that way?
I guess it wasn't even very much strategic. It was more so partly because for legal reasons I couldn't be using the images of models, and partly because I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. And it's not really about what the clothes look like on. I think a lot of people, especially in Gen Z, are more kind of aware of, the different body types and trying to make sure it's inclusive to all body types and anyone can wear the outfits. And so I didn't want to keep it limited to a certain body type or a certain type of person. I wanted anyone to be able to download these guides and shop them and feel confident in their outfits. So I just didn't really want to put an image in their head of what this outfit should look like. I think me creating the outfit ideas is just enough for them to get inspiration and they can use what they want from it. But it's just keeping it simple and just making it as easy as possible for these people to get the outfits they want and achieve the style that they desire.
Yeah. Okay. So we've already established, you know, successful social media influencer. You're branching off. You're in the startup. The story is unfolding. It's the reason I'm grateful. I'm glad you joined us here at startups.com. I've been enjoying, you know, the journey with you. What is the ultimate vision? Let's talk about you for a bit. I have some questions. What's your ultimate vision? Like your dream of dreams?
I guess my hope is that this becomes kind of a leading platform for Gen Z to get style inspiration, because there's a lot of platforms for older audiences, especially millennials, that help them find their style, that give them outfit ideas, that give them specific items to buy. But a lot of times these platforms are a bit outdated and they're just not for Gen Z. They're just a lot different. And so I'm trying to create a platform that is very specific to Gen Z. And it's like the leading one that they go to when they need style help.
Okay. So I am Gen X, but you know, my kids accuse me of being a boomer all the time, and I'm just totally irrelevant. That's how fast. Like, explain. You know, let's talk about this. Explain. Like, you're able to say this stuff for millennials is not relevant to Gen Z. Like, what is the difference between millennials and Gen Z now, in your experience, and not just in fashion, but in your opinion? What makes your generation different than the millennials? Because can't understand really either of them.
I guess I'm on the older side of Gen Z, so I'm like right in between. But I think what I've noticed is just Gen Z is very bold and they're not afraid to say what they want. They're not afraid to stand up for what they believe in. They're just like bolder. And so a lot of times the content that's tailored towards millennials it's just a lot safer. And so I'm kind of trying to go out of the box, do something more that's more fulfilling for Gen Z. And Gen Z also cares more about sustainability. Of course, I'm sure that there's stats that millennials do too, but based on my research on Gen Z, they care a lot about sustainability. They also don't they won't look at something if it's taking long to load, or they just have a really short attention span. So you need to capture their attention immediately. And so that's why I say like bold. I'm looking to kind of like break that wall with Gen Z.
It's kind of like the difference between YouTube, long form content, and podcasting, which us boomers love.
I
You
like
know,
talk.
okay, good. Glad. So I'm not that irrelevant, but TikTok is like the ultimate, just like it is. There's the attention span of literally like a flea is
Yeah.
what, you know, what's going on there. So you've adapted your stuff to reach Gen Z. So it's about being bold, it's about sustainability, it's about having those messages, you know, things like that. What other what advice? So say let's flip the tables for a second. You're advising a boomer, a boomer founder, and I want to reach Gen Z. What advice would you give a boomer and I want to market to Gen Z?
I guess think outside the box, think creatively, do something you just wouldn't typically think would work. I think like, for example, Duolingo on TikTok, they completely changed the game. They took just a language learning app and then they kind of personified it on TikTok and they used their like mascot and he's in all of the videos and it's really funny, it's really eye-catching. And they kind of started the trend for a lot of other accounts to do something similar. Like I think some of the airlines now on TikTok, they personify the airplane and they make it like it's a creature, a person, and they do all of the trends and everything. Like I think Gen Z loves these crazy ideas that you just wouldn't typically think of in the past. Like I just think in the past it was very straightforward and it was just safe. And now it's like you just have to think creatively.
So someone living in this space, again, let's cross-reference the fact that you and I are completely different generations. Okay. So when I do the research, I see that, okay, TikTok is, huge, right? Facebook became Meta, changed. Like Facebook was the stuff, us boomers use. Like my kids are like, wouldn't touch Facebook with a 10-foot pole, type thing, right? And so we're starting to see YouTube start to compete with YouTube Shorts, and they're going to monetize that, and all those things. We're sure you're keeping up on that. The Instagram has been trying to, Reels. Everyone's kind of coming out with this sort of thing. What do you think is the future of social media? What trends are you looking at, and kind of like, maybe I should get ready to pivot in that or take advantage of this? What are you seeing from your vantage point?
I think I definitely think TikTok, I think short form videos. I think now live shopping is becoming a trend and more people going on live. I think people love to see like real time, what are people up to? What products are they using? What are they doing? I think still short form video will be here for a while. Um, I also think it's interesting, like I do think podcasting is still pretty popular. I think newsletters have still been growing. I think just visual content especially, but kind of a mix of everything. And I'm not sure what's going to happen with Instagram because they keep trying to copy the other platforms and it's so hard to say, but I think there's still a need for it because TikTok is kind of like the main platform, but then you still need an Instagram for people to go to when they find you on TikTok because you need it's kind of like a business card these days of like finding your actual profile on Instagram from TikTok. So I think there's still a need for it to like give it more information and have more resources on there, but it's definitely different.
Yeah, my son showed me. He said you have to interlink all the social media accounts. So he got on TikTok, and then TikTok's not really good for monetization and building ongoing, connection and subscribers. It's kind of like TikTok's almost taken the social part out of media and just made it media, type thing. And so you don't even have to be subscribed where you're served videos. That's one of the changes. But he got millions of views on one video on TikTok, and then all of a sudden his subscriber count on YouTube went up. But then also the main mechanism that people communicate with him are DMs on Instagram. I'm like, wait a second. You put out a video on TikTok, it drives subscribers, but they don't even talk to you on YouTube where your subscribers are. They DM you. I'm like, how does this even make sense? You're describing this exact phenomenon.
Yeah, exactly. I think people can gain a really fast following on TikTok, but that doesn't mean they're loyal followers. Like they could follow you, but then forget about you the next day. And you kind of have to find a way to be remembered. And so that's why it's so important to have other platforms too, that you can gain a real community on and kind of keep them like keep giving them content, keep giving them value. So that's why Instagram is still so important because you can link them there and put everything else that they can kind of find on there.
Okay. What are your thoughts about Gen Z, young people on social media trying to build this business, being creators, influencers, and the effects of mental health? Because it's a major issue. You see studies out there, but they're done by boomers, like me. And then like I've seen stories of like, pretty girls stalked, someone because of fan. Like I was watching a horrifying thing about how, a one young Twitch streamer, I guess, and a fan showed up and the dad shot the fan because the fan wouldn't leave and all this stuff, and she's back on social media. I'd be like horrified. Like, what are your thoughts on what's going on with young people and social media? You're right in it. You and I have discussed what it's like to deal with online criticisms, and I've talked to you about my experience of being on the TikTok in China and how fat shamed I was as soon as I got popular, different things. What are your thoughts on all that's going on?
Yeah, it's not good. It's I mean, I feel really bad for kids growing up now because it was just kind of developing as I was growing up. And I feel really lucky that I like had a childhood kind of without most of this stuff. I feel like now you just can't avoid it. And I don't know how parents can like censor content because kids are gonna see it, it's just it's really hard. I think there's such a fine line because on one hand, there's a lot of positive aspects to social media. It's bringing people together, it's cultivating community, it's allowing people to express themselves creatively or find new skills or learn things. I think there's so many amazing things about it that I find to be really, really beneficial in my life. But at the same time, I think for mental health, it can be completely, completely negative. Not only are the screen times of like mine and I'm sure millions of other people's phones insane because we're spending so much time scrolling, which is just not healthy when we should be living. And in addition to that, if you are putting yourself out there on social media, it's pretty inevitable to receive hate comments or feedback or any of that. So I think it's just a fine line and you kind of need to have healthy boundaries around it. I know for me, I have screen time set up on my screen limit set up on my accounts. So I usually am just using them for work. And then sometimes I'll catch myself scrolling and I'll be like, it'll come up that I've used all the time and I have to quickly get off of it. So that's definitely helpful. And also just living in the moment more and just not having to post everything online. I think falling into that trap can definitely be really rough for mental health.
Hmm. I appreciate your perspective. Yeah. And I appreciate us being able to have these conversations, me, raising kids who are teenagers, in this space, want to become an influencer. It's been helpful, what you shared. So thank you. My next question. So this can be a touchy subject, but I say let's broach it. I know you're always open. What's it like being a female founder? Let me expand on this. Like, even the term female founder, like, it's common. We throw this term around all the time, female founders, because there's alliteration. It's easy to say female founder, two F's. But then I've had female founders, women say, and I don't like being referred to as female, right? Type thing. I'm a woman founder. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know, and different things. And I've had conversations like people said, no, Ed, we consider you an ally. And I'm like, oh gosh, I didn't know that we were in this sort of spot. How much experience have you had being a woman and wanting to start a business and different types of stereotypes or maybe even challenges of being a woman? How much have you encountered that, or is it just not a thing right now for Gen Z founders? I don't know, tell me.
I feel like I haven't personally encountered too much hardship with that because I'm still so new to it. And Yeah, and I'm working kind of on my own most of the time, so I don't feel like I'm having those interactions yet. Like I haven't, raised funding and had these meetings. That's always scary to like have meetings with investors that are probably older males. Like that's definitely intimidating. And yeah, so I haven't had too much issues with it yet, but I also have imposter syndrome for sure. And so I don't even feel like I am a female founder yet.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, we
Yeah.
haven't talked about that. So if you can expand, like what do you mean imposter syndrome? How does that show up in your life?
I guess I just sometimes don't feel like I don't feel like I'm uh I don't know what the word is. Qualified, I guess, to be, because I haven't had so much experience yet. And I did get out of college recently. So I guess I feel like I'm doing all the work and I'm really working so hard, but then at the same time I'm like, but I can't be that. So yeah.
Well, first you graduated college, so congratulations. That's not
Thanks.
as common as you would think. So what I love, even though, I appreciate your comments of like, college or education might not stay current. College or a learning environment teaches you to learn how to learn. So clearly you've learned the skill of lifelong learning to train yourself and to be ambitious that way. The second thing, like if you look at the stats, how many people are on social media and would love to be paid to be on social media? The numbers that actually can, sustain a living on social media are infinitesimally small compared to the number. It's like how many people want to be professional baseball players or basketball players, on the courts in their garages and, et cetera, and how many actually make it there. So you fall into a really rare category. Now, obviously, my kids tell me all the time, but dad, you have to understand, we're comparing ourselves to Mr. Beast and, these other huge, PewDiePies and everybody out there. So we feel like, like little specks compared to those, big guys. And I go, but if you statistically look, you're in the upper echelon that you're making money. So even though you have been able to kind of punch through the atmosphere or the ceiling that many others can't get through, you still have some imposter syndrome. You don't think you're qualified.
Yeah, I guess that's natural just with anything, but yeah, I guess I do. I mean, I feel so grateful and so just lucky to be in the position I'm in, and I do recognize how hard I've worked to get there. So I definitely do. I just have moments where I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not cut out for this. But then I get back and I'm like, I'm good. So it
And
just depends.
what resources or how do you want to try to deal with it when imposter syndrome or to prevent imposter syndrome from, affecting you long term?
That's a good question. I mean, I definitely talk to a lot of other creators, which is helpful. And that's been really nice. There's a lot of other people doing the same thing. So I've been able to connect with a lot of people, and everyone kind of feels the same way, or at least a lot of the people I've talked to. So it's nice to be able to relate. And just talking to you, talking to people within this community is super helpful as well, just to get perspectives. I think that's the biggest thing. Like when I'm feeling like this, it's usually because I'm kind of isolated and it's because I'm working on my own so much of the time. So I usually just try to make meetings, schedule meetings with people, talk to whoever I can and get perspectives, and it really helps.
Well, let me acknowledge that, all my interactions with you, what I love is you have a consistent intensity of execution. So every time we talk, you come back and you've done all this stuff, right? So that's the first thing. Second, you ask great questions. And third, you're really coachable. So it's easy, it's enjoyable to, advise someone like you, mentor, and, all those things. Whereas you don't come across as some of us might expect from millennials or Gen Z, kind of like entitled or not grounded in reality or just, completely just extreme in their thinking, because that's what a lot of what we see. Like I see videos all the time about the most extreme and ludicrous TikToks and the
Mhm.
TikTok challenges, and you know, kids choking themselves and filming, getting up and they're dying or eating Tide Pods or something like that. So our view of, Gen Z, especially thinking that they could possibly entrepreneurs, can get kind of skewed, but you're kind of sending the contradiction, and you're pleasantly surprising in terms of that expectation. What are your
Thank
thoughts
you.
on that? When I say something like that to you, what goes through your mind?
I guess it's expected at this point.
Hmm.
It's just, like I said, Gen Z is so bold. So I'm not surprised when I see content like that. And also in terms of the entitlement and everything, I think that's interesting. And I think it's because of social media, because there's this instant gratification to everything now. And I feel like it's harder for people to have patience and like let things happen naturally. And so everyone's just expecting immediate success, expecting immediate results. And so I think that's where a lot of the entitlement comes in. And so I've been trying really hard to just be patient in all of this and just in life in general, not just professionally, but like just personally, just be patient and let things happen as they're meant to and work hard and do everything in my power to do the right things, but also not, expect everything at once.
All right. I'm going to leave you the last word. The question is, what would you say to all the other Erins out there that are just about to graduate college or just graduated or going through college and then thinking about going down the path that you are? What advice based on, like, okay, recognizing, yeah, you can feel imposter syndrome sometime, but you are, if this founder journey is like, 100 steps, you've at least gone through steps 1 through 10. So you can give advice to people who are on steps 0 through 9, right? So the other errands out there, what advice would you give, so the people who are watching, so I can circulate it to other entrepreneurs, in your similar vein? What would you say to them?
I guess I would say the same thing as I just said is just be patient because it took me a really, really long time to get to this point. I started my first account 8 years ago. So it's been an 8 year journey. I didn't really even start monetizing until 5 years in, 5 to 6 years in.
Wow.
So I just kept going. I stayed consistent. I kept posting. I didn't think it was ever going to become anything, but I just kept going with it anyway. So I'd say just stay consistent, stay patient. If you do the work and you you just work towards your goals every day, get a little bit done every day, it will work out in the end, but it might take a while, and that's okay.
Well, Erin, if I had daughters, you would be someone I would say, yeah, I would say, Erin, would you spend some time with my kids? That's how
Thank
impressive
you.
it's been to get to know you, and I just appreciate how thoughtful you are. Thank you so much, and look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.